not well. I mean, it's taken me 6 years. I take that back. I did not feel especially intimidated by the commercial success of The Woman in the Window. And having worked in publishing for 10 years prior to the publication of that novel, I can say with confidence that the success or lack of success of any book is down centrally to luck. And that's not false modesty. Good publishing certainly plays a part, and my book was expertly published worldwide. Again, though, that was luck. I was lucky that my literary agents placed me with the right publishers. I should add, actually, that the book did not work in every single territory. There were a couple where it failed. And that too is probably luck, bad luck. I say all this because the success of that book actually felt less intimidating as I embarked on the second novel than liberating. I thought The Woman in the Window has been this remarkable adventure. How lucky am I? From the get-go, from its acquisition by 40-something publishers to the success of the publication most places to the film adaptation. Lucky, lucky, lucky. I'm very grateful, truly. And best of all was the opportunity to travel the world and to commune with so many readers who read and responded to the book. I mean, how boundlessly rewarding, truly. But I cannot expect that to happen again. And I was about to say that after James Cameron directed Titanic, what did he do? He did Avatar, so that's a really bad example. He did manage to graduate, as it were. But few people are lucky enough to follow up a phenomenal success with something equally successful. It just doesn't happen. I hope that End of Story reaches more readers than The Woman in the Window did. I hope that very much. But knowing that it probably wouldn't was, again, freeing to me. I could write the book I wanted to write. I recognized what worked and what readers responded to in The Woman in the Window, which was its emotional intensity. And so I tried to write a novel that explored themes of regret and loss and even revenge, even more fully than The Woman in the Window explored some of those themes. As I reviewed it while promoting it, and then after my tour ended, I thought, okay, the mystery angle, the plot, is good enough, certainly, I think, as a former mystery editor, does the job, but I'd like to challenge myself. I want to write a story in which there are multiple characters, not just one central character. I want to write a story in which people actually go outside. Wouldn't that be novel and refreshing? I want to write a story that features not one or two twists, but more. And the plot of End of Story is very elaborate. I hope it's lucid, but it is very elaborate. And I spend most of the book, or much of it, setting up these dominoes. In the final quarter, they all fall. And my hope is that this will genuinely surprise readers. If you look on Amazon, for example, you will see that the publishers have billed their books as, book XXX, the most shocking twist you'll read all year, or book YYY. The twist will leave you comatose, or words to that effect. And scrolling through them, you think, how many twists can there be? Like, when was the last time a book or film... I'm very easily shocked, so I'm not going to say when was the last time a book or film shocked me. But when was the last time a book or film did something truly different? I remember, and we're reaching back 25 years now, I remember seeing The Sixth Sense and thinking, oh, he was dead the whole time. I've never seen that before. And I don't think anyone had. I think that's why that story, or a large reason why that story struck so many people as it did. There is altogether far too much pressure on authors to concoct jaw-dropping twists. It's preposterous. And certainly lots of readers race through books just to arrive at that, I don't know if I can say this on camera, but that orgasm of an ending. That's all they're reading for, really. It's like a Jack in the Box. And accordingly, a lot of readers judge a book by whether it succeeds in surprising them or not. And if it does, it is a successful novel. And if it doesn't, it is not a successful novel, no matter what else the novel might have to offer. I feel very confident in saying that not all of my future books will feature surprises like the surprises built into End of Story. I also recognized, though, that my second book ought to really deliver on that front. Yes, readers responded to the emotional intensity of the first novel, but I wanted to offer a proper thriller. Whether or not readers see any of these twists coming, and there are, I would count 4 in End of Story, I don't know. I have tried to play fair in constructing this story while obscuring, not hiding, but obscuring some elements that might tip the reader off to what's going on. Certainly, it's a way to have fun with this genre. And because some people attach real significance to words like crime as distinct from words like thriller, as distinct from words like mystery, I tend to refer to anything that could be classified as any of those books as a crime novel, just for ease. This book pays a lot of homage to so-called Golden Age mysteries, traditional mysteries of the sort that Agatha Christie and Arthur Conan Doyle were writing a century ago and more. Much in the way that The Woman in the Window paid homage to those old films that the heroine spent so much time watching. And in both cases, this is in part because those happen to be 2 of the few areas I know anything about. And in part because, and this is a pretty cheap trick perhaps, but by invoking the names and tropes of traditional mysteries, you automatically lend that same aura, that same atmosphere to whatever it is you're writing. So, for example, I can construct this elaborate funhouse of a mansion in End of Story that's packed with cracked mirrors and animal skeletons and what have you. And then when I mention something like The Hound of the Baskervilles, readers are that much more attuned to the vibe I'm trying to summon up. Of course, in End of Story, what begins as a traditional mystery might or might not shapeshift somewhat, so that by the end, it might or might not be a different kind of novel, which is, or might be, my way of subverting the reader's expectations and the traditional mystery genre. As for the relationship between a fan, really, and an author, this was something I had observed during my days in the publishing industry, but of course I'd never experienced myself until I wrote a book that people actually read. And as I said earlier, the most rewarding aspect of this entire adventure has been the opportunity to meet readers. Readers are effectively my bosses. They are the ones who employ me. And so I feel a respect and reverence for them. And yet when a reader says to me something like, oh, this book meant something to me, or even just, I enjoyed reading it, I think, did you? Because I wrote it. Did you really? I react at least with a sense of gratitude, certainly, but also disbelief. It's very fun, and again, very rewarding, but it's consistently surprising to me. It is a challenge, I learned the hard way, to structure the story of a novel around an event that took place some time ago. In this case, 20 years ago, the double disappearance of a mother and her son. And to state the obvious, it is a challenge because there's far less urgency to work out what happened to them, particularly if you are someone who is about to die. You could argue, like, honestly, why do you care at this point? You've got 3 months to live. And that is one of the reasons, and I'm getting technical here, but that is one of the reasons that on the very first page of this novel, page 1, there's a dead body. And that was important to me because otherwise I worried that the reader would not feel especially invested in the central action of the story. I mean, the reader didn't know these characters who disappeared before beginning the book. Why should the reader care? If we begin the story, however, with a body, we don't know whose body, but a body in the present, that not only gets the reader's attention, but keeps them reading until we meet that body again, because that, of course, is a flash forward in the middle of the book. Thematically, however, I'm quite interested in the past because the longer a mystery endures, perhaps the less urgent it gets. That's a fair point, but the more mysterious it gets too. So recently, very recently, like a couple of weeks ago, I was reading about how some government authority, had found the wreckage of the plane of Amelia Earhart, the American aviator or aviatrix who disappeared, and whose disappearance for 70 years has fascinated many people. And it actually wasn't, I think, a particularly revelatory discovery, like she crashed, which everyone assumed. But still, there was a sense for me, at any rate, of, oh, at last, the mystery is solved. Had that mystery been solved a week after she died, I don't know that anyone would have thought, at last, the mystery is solved. So, to stage a key action or event that generates a mystery pretty far back in the past is a way of allowing that mystery to ripen, as it were, and perhaps to assume new complexities as theories that one might have evolved, like, say, they just ran off together, or so-and-so killed them. The first novel I'm going to recommend is a very well-known one, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I've read this book, I think, 3 times in my life. First as a kid, when I probably read an abridged version, and twice as an adult. The book is a swashbuckling adventure. It's magnificently well constructed and plotted. And its themes of revenge and regret are timeless and, in no small part, inspired this book. But more interestingly, or at least as interestingly to me, it does not conclude on the note or the tone that one might expect. And rereading the book, I was really surprised by those final pages. It's a magnificent entertainment, but also a surprisingly thoughtful one. So that's one classic of world literature that I would recommend. Secondly, a novel called In the Woods by Tana French, who is an Irish woman. One of the characters in my book notes that women make the best crime writers, which is my contention, certainly. And I believe this is because, as the character explains in the book, women every day have to deal with sinister forces, threats, menaces in the form often of men. These are threats to which I, as a man, am usually oblivious. So I think many women are more alert to danger and as such make better crime writers. And Tana French is an absolutely excellent crime writer. In the Woods is her debut. It's the first novel in a series set in Dublin. The writing is gorgeous. And the mystery, or one of the mysteries, because there were two in the novel braided together, one of the mysteries concludes on a note that will infuriate some readers. Indeed, it has infuriated many readers. For me, it totally worked. I thought it was a very brave choice. I cannot recommend this enough for readers of both crime fiction and so-called literary fiction. Another novel, also contemporary, is called All the Birds Singing. It's by, I'm not sure if she's Australian or British, I think, a writer named Evie Wyld, W-Y-L-D. And it is literary fiction with a psychological suspense edge. And amongst its many virtues is its structure. I was reading the book for a few chapters before I realized how it was put together technically. And I'd never seen anything like that. I still haven't. It's incredibly simple, but fiendishly clever and really effective. The fourth novel I would recommend is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, another classic of world literature. And this is considered to be, by most scholars, the first detective novel, as opposed to the first detective short story, which is what Poe wrote a few decades earlier. This is a gothic extravaganza involving sleepwalkers and hidden jewels and a lavish mansion. I love a lavish mansion. I mean, this is my second straight novel to feature a lavish mansion. I'm pretty sure the third novel will feature a lavish mansion. It is also playful and just really good fun. And anyone who finds Dickens a bit dense will probably relish this particular book. And the final novel, if I'm wasting an opportunity here, please tell me. I suspect most people in Spain have read this book. But what is in the States and the UK published as Captain Alatriste by Arturo Pérez Reverte. And I'm rounding this list off with this book because it sort of brings us full circle. You can see elements of The Count of Monte Cristo in this novel of swordplay and adventure. It is extraordinarily light on its feet, and I've only read an English translation. I speak almost no Spanish except for like agua, which might prove helpful one day. But reading the eight Alatriste novels that have been published in English probably inspired me to try writing a book of my own, just because the author makes this look so easy. And I don't know if it is easy for the author, but the stories, as translated into English certainly, are smoothly, really beautifully written. The plot just cracks along. And he manages to play with archetype in a way that intrigues and delights me. Yes, these are characters we know from recent and not so recent literary history, mostly not so recent literary history, but there is something sly and fresh about the way he writes them and the way they behave. I could read those books over and over. They never cease to entertain me, and I wish I could write as easily as he seems to write.